Thank you, and good morning, everybody. My name is Tom Niemerg. I'm a state representative from Dixon. I'm also a member of the Joint Committee on Administrative Rules, or JCAR. You know, if we think about this last year in education, it's been one of the most challenging years for teachers, for administrators, for students, and for families. The challenges of limited time and focus for remote learning, as well as some of the logistical challenges of bringing students and teachers back to schools for in-person education, have put additional strain on an education system in Illinois that already had challenges and weaknesses for many years in the past. For example, in Illinois today, just 37% of third grade students perform at grade level for English language arts, and just 41% of third grade students perform at grade level for mathematics. In addition, I hear regularly from school administrators and teachers in my district and around Illinois about the challenges of finding qualified teachers to work in school districts small and large, and the teacher shortage that has put additional strain on so many school districts and so many systems across the state of Illinois. Yet instead of trying to rally behind empowering schools to reopen in-person education, attracting and retaining new and qualified teachers to help us address some of our concerns and some of our challenges with basic educational concepts like reading, writing, and mathematics. Instead of focusing on those things, the Illinois State Board of Education has instead rewritten a significant rule around the creation of teaching standards, one that would impose page after page after page of new and additional mandates on teacher education and inject partisan, progressive politics into the classroom. You know, across the country and around the world, we've seen politics be injected in more and more parts of our lives. And the litmus test of is someone progressive enough or not has come up time and time again. Unfortunately, the rule that's being offered by the State Board of Education today around culturally responsive teaching standards is really just an attempt to impose further progressive politics into our education system instead of focusing on the things that we know teachers, administrators, students, and families across Illinois need, and that's more teachers, more engagement, better opportunity to improve those core educational skills that will give them a better chance to succeed in their career or in their college life. So we're today drawing some additional attention to this. We've heard from thousands of constituents and Illinoisans across the state who have expressed serious concern with what this would mean in their school districts and in their children's classrooms. And we think it's time that the public say to the Board of Education, State Board of Education, enough is enough with playing political games. Let's instead focus on the educational mission that we all share in common. I will now turn it over to my colleague, Representative Adam Niemerg.
Thank you, Representative Demmer. Good morning. I'm 109th District State Representative Adam Niemerg from Diederich, Illinois. I represent 9 rural Illinois counties that are home to dozens of grade, middle, and high school districts. Since the beginning of this pandemic, I've heard from students, teachers, administrators, and school board members that have been forced to quickly adapt to an ever-changing patchwork of regulations coming from the governor. Our teachers are doing their best to manage the load they have now. Teachers are working with students in the classroom, students that are in and out of the classrooms due to quarantines, and students that have chosen to learn remotely for the entirety of the school year. We have put this on our local school districts to figure out, and we've put it on our local teachers to figure out. And while they're trying to do their best just to get to reading, writing, and math, teachers are now being asked to implement a progressive approach and viewpoint to their everyday lessons. What we're here to discuss today is yet another overreach, more virtue signaling, and an unworkable and possibly unmeasurable rule that will exacerbate, not solve the issue of equity in education. My colleagues have mentioned a teacher shortage. The confusing and inconsistent implementation of the governor's mitigations at the various county health departments in the state of Illinois is causing entire teaching staffs to quarantine for sometimes a week or two at a time. This causes the school to rely on substitute teachers to try to manage the remote learners as well as the in-class learners. Illinois teachers don't have time to teach their students the tools they need to meet basic requirements in English and math. Now we're going to make teachers prove that they are woke or progressive and take their licenses away if they don't prescribe to a particular political philosophy. Under this new rule, teachers will now have to take steps to incorporate some kind of self-help therapy while at the same time exposing their supposed biases to their students to help their students realize that their teacher is a part of a system that's stacked against them. What happened to teaching our students to be hopeful and aspirational? The teacher shortage and the failure rates we're seeing means that our priority right now should be supporting teachers and working with local school districts to resume in-person instruction for every student. I am a strong believer in local control. Our school boards need the flexibility to make sure our students are getting adequate class time, learning the basics that they will need to compete in the real world. Unfortunately, it seems the real world looks different to me and to the teachers and to the school administrators that I talk to than whatever planet the bureaucrats pushing pencils at the Illinois State Board of Education are living on. We're simply asking that our constituents reach out to the members of JCAR and plead with them. Enough is enough. This is not education. This is indoctrination. Now I'll turn it over to Representative Steve Reich.
Morning, I'm State Representative Steve Reich from the 63rd District in McHenry County. I'm also a member of JCAR along with Tom Demmer. The culturally responsive teaching standards were promulgated by the Diverse and Learner-Ready Teacher Program, which you can learn more about on the ISB website. The stated goal of the program is to increase the number of minority teachers in Illinois schools by the year 2025 and the number of minority teacher candidates by 2023. These are goals which I have no problem with, but the CRTL standards go much further. The current Illinois professional teaching standards already state in its very first section, the competent teacher understands the diverse characteristics and abilities of each student and how individuals develop and learn within the context of their social, economic, cultural, linguistic, and academic experiences. The teacher uses these experiences to create instructional opportunities that maximize student learning. The CRTL standards go far beyond what's already public policy by inserting a politically motivated pedagogy into the training programs for new teachers and the professional development requirements of existing teachers, forcing them to, among other things, meet additional politically charged standards to become a teacher in Illinois, thus potentially making the statewide teacher shortage even worse. Embrace and encourage certain political viewpoints and perspectives, not focus on educating and helping our students grow academically, and incorporate those same political viewpoints and perspectives into the curriculum and text selections. ISB will tell you that the standards are not being integrated into the PK through 12 curriculum or the PK through 12 schools. They'll further say that current teachers are not being evaluated on methods used to relate to the new standards. Not yet. In many ways, that's worse because teachers instructed in the new standards will assume that they may curate curriculum in ways, as was recently reported from Cupertino, California, where a teacher forced third graders to deconstruct their personal characteristics and then rank themselves according to their power and privilege. Third graders. This is not what education is about. In short, these new standards would require teachers to incorporate highly sensitive and politically charged topics into the classroom curriculum, elevating social activism over the mastery of basic skills. I've heard from both my constituents and residents outside my district, many of them teachers, from all corners of this state who are asking me, as a committee member on JCAR, to vote to reject this controversial rule when it's debated on February 16th. Illinois is experiencing a massive teacher shortage, and amid the ongoing challenge of educating students throughout the COVID-19 pandemic, the state board wants to place even more burdens on our teachers. Through these rules, ISB is requiring that teachers go above and beyond what's required of them to a level that may violate their constitutional rights. After a year of social unrest and political unease, is injecting social activism into our public schools the direction we want to take? Will this alleviate our teacher shortage? Will it improve student outcomes? Let's be clear. This rule is not an improvement to education. It's an attempt to interject politics into the classroom. The standards that ISB wants to impose are beyond misguided. Requiring certain political viewpoints in our school systems is simply unacceptable, and ISB has no business mandating them on educators statewide. We should be concerned with educating our next generation, not indoctrinating them with political beliefs imposed by unaccountable bureaucrats. Thank you, and with that, I'll open it up for questions.
All right. Thank you to the three of you. We have a lot of questions that came in. Before we get started to questions, we did have some that came in on the JCAR process. I was just wondering if Leader Demmer could briefly discuss how this rule is going to play out at the next meeting, or how it may play out.
Yeah, sure. So the JCAR process is one that over the past year, I think a lot of people have, for the first time, heard about. JCAR exists outside of the normal legislative channel of debating a bill and then having it voted on by the entire House and the Senate. Instead, the JCAR, the Joint Committee on Administrative Rules, is a group of 6 representatives and 6 senators, and evenly split between Republican and Democratic parties, who serve as a check on the administrative branch as they put forward administrative rules. And so the administrative rule was offered by the Illinois State Board of Education. It'll come before this small JCAR panel at our February meeting. And at that time, JCAR does not vote yes or no on the proposed rules. Instead, the only function that JCAR has is not to approve a rule, but simply have an opportunity to block implementation of that rule or to prohibit the filing of that rule. And so we expect at the February meeting that a motion will be made to prohibit this specific administrative rule from being filed. Now, as I mentioned, there's 12 members, and in order for that motion to carry, you would need 8 members voting in support of prohibition. So 8 out of 12 would have to oppose the rule in order for it to be blocked. And so at the JCAR meeting in February, we would expect to have a roll call vote and see if we were successful in getting 8 members to agree.
Okay, thank you so much for that. So we'll get into the questions now. Dave Dahl at WTAX, what is the difference between this proposal and accepting kids who identify as being of different cultures and persuasions? And that's to anybody.
I think I pointed out in my comments the fact that the Illinois professional teaching standards already take that into account. So we're not telling teachers to not do the kinds of things that the professional standards tell them to do. What we're objecting to is the expansion of the type of inquiries and lesson plans through lesson plans that teachers will make, can make under these new standards. That's the distinction.
Thank you. From Mike Militich at the Quincy Media Group, don't you feel students in minority communities should have teachers that understand longstanding inequity?
Absolutely, they should. And as Steve has mentioned, many of these standards are all already part of the requirements. They're also something that good teachers choose to do. They choose to understand the students that they serve. They choose to understand the communities they're a part of, the school districts that they're a part of, and find innovative and unique ways of incorporating that into their classroom. But again, what we're talking about here is not, simple acknowledgement of, some of these long-running trends. Instead, it's, several pages of new specific criteria about how a teacher has to develop counter narratives and engage in student advocacy and recognize systems of oppression and things that go well beyond what a normal and responsible teacher would bring to the classroom already.
Thank you. From the center square, how do you think this will impact the teacher shortage or attracting new teachers to the profession in Illinois?
I believe that it will increase the teacher shortage that we have here in Illinois because if implemented, it is a political progressive approach to education in the state of Illinois, and other folks in my district will disagree with the implementation, and they'll seek employment elsewhere in other states that more align with their constitutional beliefs and what they feel that how the kids should be educated.
Thank you. And actually, somewhat of a follow-up to that, how do you think this will impact families when deciding whether to stay in Illinois or find educational opportunities elsewhere?
Well, I just kind of a follow-up to that. I mean, Representative Demmer had a great point about 2/3 of Illinois students fail to meet standards for math and English, and this will further exacerbate that particular situation and put focus on activism and politicize our school districts all the way through academia K through 12 and then through the collegiate level as well. So that will force folks to look to other states in order to provide education for their children.
Perfect. Jim Leach at WMAY, can you give an example of the, in quotes, partisan progressive politics that will be in classrooms from this rule? What will be a part of the classroom content that isn't already there?
If you read from the standards themselves, which I will do, it says, among other things, Section A of 24.50 says the culturally responsive teacher and leader will understand the value of the notion that multiple lived experiences exist, that there is not one correct way of doing or understanding something, and that what is seen as correct is most often based on lived experiences, and assess the biases and perceptions will affect their teaching practice and how they access tools to mitigate their own behavior: racism, sexism, homophobia, unearned privilege, Eurocentrism, etc. Culturally responsive teachers will know and understand how current curriculum and approaches to teaching impact students who are not part of the dominant culture. These are just several examples of what is in the standards themselves, and I do believe that that moves us further down the road toward political rather than pedagogical enhancement.
Thank you. ISB says, every student deserves to feel welcome, included, and accepted at school, and to see their cultural identity affirmed and represented in the curriculum. This feeling of belonging is critical to improving academic and behavioral outcomes for Illinois students. That's a quote from ISB. What is any of your reactions to that?
I agree that students should feel welcome and supported in their schools and in their communities. Again, what we're talking about is not a simple concept like that today. Instead, it's dozens of bullet points about how teachers will be required to engage in student activism, in how many protests a kid would be a part of in the year could theoretically be something that a teacher would be held accountable for. These are things that go beyond acceptance and recognition of students or creating a welcoming environment, and instead put a number of requirements and criteria for teachers to follow in order for them to get their license and to be in good standing in Illinois. There's a significant difference between those two, and that's why this is an overreach. It establishes a whole series of new mandates that are outside of some of the core parts of education that we're already struggling with in Illinois. This would simply devote more time towards some of these progressive causes and less time towards the type of curriculum
and Zorn and McQueer
that students and schools across Illinois already are dealing with.
Sorry about that. And the last question that we got in for Tom Demmer, and it is off topic. Adam Kinzinger has launched his new America First organization. Do you agree with his characterization of the Republican Party in Illinois? What do you think about talk among some LaSalle County Republicans to vote to censure him?
Look, I think it's normal after any election cycle that people within a political party on either side of the aisle bring forward what they think were strengths or weaknesses, lessons learned. There's always a little bit of that kind of soul searching that happens after an election cycle, especially after one where, you know, Republicans lost a number of seats, lost control of the U.S. Senate, lost the presidency. I think it's a healthy time for Republicans with variety of beliefs to come forward and talk about what identity the party has, where we go in the future, what the appropriate steps are for rebuilding some of the strength in the Illinois Republican Party and the American Republican Party. I think it's a normal process and part of a healthy debate and democracy.
All right, thank you all. And for any follow-up questions, just feel free to reach out to me directly. Have a great day.